And we're here. And we're back.
Is that your English accent?
Yeah, that's my Professor Dave imitation.
Oh, okay.
And we're back.
Hi, this is Mark, and welcome to Nerdology, sponsored by CSO, the cult fanzine. And my very special guest today is Mr. Sean Homrig. Hey, Sean.
Hello, how are you? Hello! Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah, no problem at all. It's my pleasure. Sean is responsible for two of my favourite podcasts. Tell everyone what your shows are, Sean.
There's the TARDIS Tavern, which is basically we just get drunk and we talk about Doctor Who. And my serious podcast is the Doctor Who Book Club podcast, which I host with Eric Stadnick, also of the Doctor Who The Writer's Room podcast.
Yes.
That's released monthly, and we read selections from the Virgin New Adventures, Missing Adventures, and the BBC Eighth Doctor and Past Doctor books.
And they are very enjoyable. I listen to them regularly. It's the first thing I do. As soon as the new episode comes out, I listen to it straight away.
Oh, bless your heart. I don't get it myself. I've never listened to a podcast that was on. I can't stand it. But
Really?
yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I just can't stand listening to my own voice.
You're missing out.
But
They're really great shows.
oh, thank you very much.
Now, the reason I asked you to come onto the show is I thought it'd be fun to talk about American Horror Story. And I believe you're a bit of a fan.
Yes, I am a huge fan. I have the first one on Blu-ray, and I'm going to purchase the second season as soon as it comes out. And I understand that you like it a lot too.
I do. I got given the Blu-ray for my birthday recently, and I watched the first episode and got completely hooked. So it didn't take me too long to go through it, but yeah, great series. I haven't seen the second series yet, so that's something to look forward to. But I guess you've seen that.
Oh gosh. Yes. It's interesting. I saw the first series. We were talking briefly before we started recording about the way that you enjoy a series really depends on the way you watch it. I personally prefer to do what you call binge watching.
Yeah.
Where you could watch, 3 episodes a night until you get the whole thing done with.
Yeah.
That's how I started watching Breaking Bad, and we loved it. And then when it came to the 5th season, we really hated having to wait a week to see the next episode. And when I watched American Horror Story the first time, I was watching it an episode a week.
Yeah.
And I didn't enjoy it as much as when I watched it again on Blu-ray, where I got to watch big blocks of it, because... I don't know. That's true with a lot of stories. You mentioned Lost earlier, too, was another one that I binge-watched as well.
Especially with something like Lost, because there's so much going on. I find it a bit easier to try and keep track of what's happening if you get to sort of watch it in a consistent block rather than having to wait for a week and having to try and remember.
And I love that show, too. I'm a big supporter of that show, even though a lot of people slack it a lot. But
yeah, I kind of hung in there until the end. I watched the whole lot. It kind of tailed off for me a bit after the season 5, but I still enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely. But we're not here to talk about Lost. We're here to talk about American Horror Story. So fun fact, American Horror Story was created by fellows named Gary Murphy and Brad Falchuk.
Yes.
Who apparently got really, well, not tired, I shouldn't say, but they also created Glee.
Yeah, that freaked me out when I first found that out. I thought that was a really odd sort of juxtaposition between the two shows.
Yeah, and you haven't seen season 2 yet, but there is actually a Glee-like moment in season 2.
Oh, really?
Where they sing, like out of nowhere they sing the Name Game, which is that song that goes Shirley, Shirley, Bo Burley, Fafana, Fana, Fo Furley, and it's fantastic, and it seems so out of place, but it's wonderful. But I guess they got tired. They just wanted to bring out their darker natures, and they produced this show.
They certainly did that.
And yeah. And what's clever about it, I guess you'd call it a gimmick, even though that's not a good word to use,
Mm-hmm.
is that each season is its own separate story. All right, so season one is almost like its own self-contained miniseries, and then when they brought back season two, which is set in a mental asylum, it started all over with different characters, different story, but a lot of the same actors.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like
So
a sort
just
of a cast that he likes to use again and again.
yes, and they're coming back with the third season. I'm sorry, they're coming back for the third season as well. And for the third season, it's going to be called Coven.
Okay.
And it's also going to have Kathy Bates in it, which I'm
Oh,
excited because I
sweet.
love
Yeah.
Kathy Bates. Yeah,
Obviously,
and her and
Misery
just
was a great show.
yeah,
Yeah.
and her and Jessica Lange, I guess, are going to have some sort of they're like frenemies or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
That would be
I'm
awesome.
really looking forward to that.
Mm.
But yeah, and you know, I wondered before I came on to talk about this. I'm like, oh my god, what am I in a club? Why do they call it American Horror Story? What's so American about it?
Mm.
And I think if you look at the past of horror in general, I mean, if you're going to talk about horror television or horror movies, you'd probably go back to the 50s when the Universal monsters like Dracula, the
Yeah.
Wolfman,
Mm-hmm.
and Frankenstein. Well, that goes back even further than the 50s. I
Yeah.
think that can go all the way back to the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And then horror kind of changes, I find that it gets popular in from different countries. Like it went from America to you guys had it for a while with the
Mm-hmm.
Hammer horror movies
Yeah.
because you took some of those characters and you put your own spin on them
Yeah.
and made it more, frankly, more scary and more gory.
Mm-hmm.
And then nowadays, I mean, then you had the Italians take it in
Yeah.
the 70s, and then it went back to America in the 80s
Mm-hmm.
with the slasher films. And then Japan had the ball for a little while
Yeah.
because they made Audition and The Ring
Yeah.
and Ju-on. And then you'd have Spain make a few movies.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, really, what does each country give to the genre? And when you think about American horror,
Mm-hmm.
the idea that you have a nuclear family like you do in this story,
Yeah.
there's always something trying to threaten them. In this case, it's very Rosemary's Baby because
Yeah.
the mom is pregnant and you don't know what's going on with the baby. There's something wrong with the baby.
Mm-hmm.
They're cheating. The husband had an affair with a girl before, and they reconciled and got back together. The husband and wife did, and I'm babbling, but basically, for those of you who haven't seen the story, it's about, or the first season anyway, is about a family of three that moves into this mansion at a very cheap price in L.A.
Mm.
and it's haunted like nobody's business. I mean, there's probably, God, I have to sit down and count the number of ghosts that haunt this place.
They move there, don't they? Because the wife finds out that he's been cheating, so they decide to make a
Yes.
clean break. So there's the two parents and their daughter. So they move to LA, and like you say, you get this what frankly is an amazing house for a dirt cheap price. And
And it is a beautiful house
yeah,
too.
and the lady from the estate agents is coming clean and saying, well, for full disclosure, we have to mention that the previous owners died in the house, and that's why it's going so cheap.
Right. And it was a gay couple that was apparently a murder-suicide. And you find out later that that wasn't the case at all. It was they were killed by the house or by the ghosts that live in the house.
Well, that's you asked what's American about it. I think haunted houses definitely have a
Yes.
bit of a it's a common trope. I use that word
Yeah.
trope in American horror. So you've got things like the Amityville horror. You've got the house.
Poltergeist.
Yeah, you've got the house in Psycho as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think there's definitely a history of that, and the house itself is almost like a character in its own right.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I can think of The Shining, The Haunting. But then you have another character who's very important. The next door neighbor, played by Jessica Lange.
Oh, she is awesome.
Yeah,
She is the best thing in that, hands down. She is amazing.
She won a Golden Globe, an Emmy, and a couple other awards for this performance. If television actors could be nominated for Oscars, Well, she's already won 2 Oscars for
Yeah.
something else, but she would have gotten an Oscar if this was, a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she has, uh, well, the story begins. We find out she has one child.
Mm-hmm.
It's a girl with Down syndrome
Yeah.
who she doesn't treat very well.
Mm.
But then we find out that she's had at least 3 other children, I
Yeah,
think.
that's right.
And is it a spoiler to mention who they are?
I'm guessing if someone's going to listen to this, I reckon they've probably seen it already. So.
Yeah. Yeah, one of them is the boy who is seeing the doctor, or the dad in the family is a
Yeah.
psychiatrist. It turns out that the boy, her son, is one of the ghosts that lives in the house. And her other son died years ago. She kept him in the attic,
Mm.
and he was deformed or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. His name is Beauregard, which is really funny because my grandfather would always tell my mom and her sister that he didn't like boys, and they actually had an older brother that they kept in the attic.
Oh,
So if they
God.
ever heard anything in the house, it was their older brother upstairs.
Nice.
So, yeah. But it's important to note that at some point, the girl with Down syndrome, I think her name is Abby,
Addie.
is Addie, that's
Yeah.
right, and she's killed. She's hit by a car, but she doesn't come back as a ghost because she didn't die in the house.
Mm-hmm.
In order to come back as a ghost in the house, you actually have to die in the
Yeah.
house. And her son, the ghost son, his name is Tate.
Mm-hmm.
He died in the house because she used to live in this house,
Yeah.
and in something that it goes a little bit too far. It turns out that he was responsible for a school shooting,
Mm-hmm.
and then he killed himself in the house.
It's kind of a little bit like the Columbine tragedy.
Yes, yes. That's pretty American right there.
Yeah.
School shootings. But yeah, this was made after Columbine, but before the other one that happened not long ago.
So a lot of the characters' motivations they almost seem to be driven by the house.
Yes.
So you've got Jessica Lange's character, who now lives next door, but you get the impression she would like the house back. You've got another character, which is oh god, I forget the guy's name now. When you first see him, he's got these really bad burns down one side of his face.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I don't remember his name either, but yeah. He is not a ghost
No.
because he. But we have no idea who he is at first. We just call him the Burned Man. I don't even know what his real name is, and he seems to be harassing Dylan McDermott,
Yeah.
who I always want to call Dermot Mulroney, but that's a different guy. Dylan McDermott, he keeps encountering Dylan McDermott and actually helps Dylan McDermott kill his former girlfriend with whom he was cheating on his wife before they moved there.
Yeah.
And she's buried underneath the gazebo.
It plays
Or
out a little bit like a soap in a way, but kind of heightened because of the whole horror thing.
Yeah, definitely.
You've got all these kind of dysfunctional relationships, and so he's promised his wife he's going to make a clean breast of it. He's not going to cheat anymore, and then she keeps turning up on the scene, and he's trying to get rid of her, and it all gets very messy.
And in the meantime, there's somebody in a latex suit that keeps showing up. And that drove me crazy when I first saw it, because I was like, when are they going to explain this latex suit? This is getting a little bit ridiculous. Unfortunately, they do. Everything is tied up with a ribbon by the end of the whole story, and we find out that the latex man is actually Tate.
Yes.
And he rapes Connie Britton, whose name, the mom of the family. What is her name? Ooh. It's awful that I don't remember their names.
I'm going to cheat and have a look at my... Oh, hang on a moment. Yeah, it's Vivian. Vivian is the mother, yeah.
But...
Because she had a miscarriage, didn't she, before they moved?
Yes.
So they're already kind of at breaking point, because she's still pretty mad at him for cheating, and she's had a miscarriage. So it's a difficult time for them. And then when they just start to get back together again, she thinks because they discover this suit up in the attic, that he's just being a little bit kinky, and it turns out that it's not actually her husband who's on top of her. And then it gets very freaky because don't they find out that there's twins and they're by two different fathers?
Yeah.
I mean, that it did feel a little bit like they were jumping the shark at that point.
Well, I didn't actually know until recently that that's actually possible for cats and dogs. I didn't
Really?
know that. I don't think it's possible for people, though. I don't know. It turns out that this whole ghost rape thing has been planned by the house and by Jessica Lange, because one of the ghosts in the house is a I don't remember the actress's name, but she was also killed in the house. She was killed in a murder suicide. Her doctor was a surgeon.
Yeah.
Who was taking women, and basically they made a Frankenstein baby. And she killed the baby and then killed her husband and killed herself. And she is trying to get Tate to impregnate Vivian so that she can have a baby. And in the meantime, Jessica Lange wants the baby as well. So it kind of changes about midway through when we find out that it's all about this baby. When the baby is actually born, the house helps the birthing process along because, of course, some of the characters in the house, one of the characters in the house is a doctor, and he actually plays, how do I say this? I would say he actually plays doctor. He actually delivers the baby.
Yeah.
So, and we realize at some point that the daughter is dead, and that she's a ghost, and I kind of figured that out. It's the whole thing. It's almost like you suddenly realize that half the cast are ghosts.
Yeah.
And you have to pick out which ones are real and which one are ghosts.
I have to admit,
does that make sense?
Yeah, I didn't quite get that the daughter was a ghost until very close to the point where they revealed it. So I thought that was quite a cool reveal, because one of the rules of the way that this works is that if they're killed in the house, they exist in the house, but they can't leave the house. So there's a scene where she's trying to escape, and she keeps running out of the kitchen door, and when she thinks she's outside, she's suddenly back indoors again.
I didn't understand, though. There's a scene, the mom ends up in a mental asylum, and there's a scene where the dad and the daughter are going to visit her, and she doesn't want to leave the house, and he actually drives off with her in the back seat.
Yeah.
But she's a ghost watching this from the window, so who was in the back seat? It wasn't her ghost because she can't leave the house. I was confused.
They kind of set that up before because when they had another ghost character, it was his girlfriend who kept harassing them. They didn't realize at that point that she's a ghost, so they call some security guy to come out and take her away. So he goes to drive her off somewhere, and he turns around and realizes she's gone because she can't leave the house. Right. I think the same thing happens with the daughter. So yeah, it's one thing I thought was very cool about it is it plays out a little bit. We mentioned Lost before. You've got all these characters, and on the surface you think you know all their motivations, but then it kind of you get different parts of their personality revealed, so you kind of see a different side to them. So for instance, one character we haven't mentioned yet who's pretty important in the whole thing, she's called Moira.
Yeah, I knew you guys. Yeah.
And she is the maid, and she kind of comes along with the house. And one of the kind of cool things with her character is that both the husband and the wife see her in different ways. So to the wife, she appears as this slightly older lady who's like the hired help, whereas to the husband, I guess it's a case of them seeing what they want to see. The husband sees this quite foxy young lady dressed in kind of like a French maid's uniform. Yeah. Which gives him a bit of a surprise towards the end when she kind of reveals what she's really like. Yeah,
she comes across as a villain in the beginning.
Yeah. But by the end, she's kind of like one of the good characters.
Yeah, and I think that her motivation, much of it is that what she really wants is to get out of the house, and the only way that can happen is if they find her body, which is buried in the backyard or the front
Yeah.
yard. It's buried on the grounds because she was killed by Jessica Lange.
Yeah.
And
There's a great line.
after,
Sorry, there's a great line in one of the opening episodes where she says, "Don't make me kill you again,"
yeah,
which kind of sets things up.
yeah, yeah. But ironically, at the end, you've got all this conflict. You've got this, infidelity. You've got a horrible birthing process. You've got it all kind of ties up at the end, and they all live happily ever after as ghosts in the house. Spoiler.
I thought it was quite cool. It's almost like they function better as a family once they're dead compared to how they were when they were alive. Which
Yes. Oh yeah, definitely.
and
And if
sorry, because it was a series as opposed to a
okay.
film, you kind of invest in the characters. So I think by the time you get to the end episode, I think if they just got rid of them all and had a fairly bleak ending, I don't think that would be quite such a satisfying ending. Whereas
Right.
I think the way they tied it up, I think resolved it very well.
And there's a part that's almost unnecessary at the very end, after the family is dead and they're effectively it's now their haunted house that they get to live in for eternity. Another family of 3 purchases the house.
Yeah.
And they basically, Dylan McDermott and his wife and daughter do a Scooby-Doo on them to scare them out of the house. And I felt that whole sequence was a little unnecessary because, I mean, it was like she stabs him in the stomach and his
That's
guts
right.
fall out. And then they run out of the house and then they all have a bit of a laugh. But it's interesting what you say because by the end of the story, the people that were so unhappy with each other at the beginning are quite happy because they're decorating Christmas trees like a real family does, and in the background you've got the bad ghosts, namely Tate and the ex-girlfriend, who are just sort of sulking because they're left out because they're not good ghosts, they're bad ghosts. And I kind of thought, man, they could make a whole series of this, life with the ghosts in the house, and how they all live together. Because they aren't the only ghosts. There's more ghosts. There's 2 little boys.
That's right.
There's the Black Dahlia.
Yeah, because that's based on a real story, isn't it? The Black Dahlia.
Yeah, yeah. It in the 40s there was a woman that was found murdered in L.A. She had been cut in half and given a big, huge gash in her mouth, almost like the Joker. And the scene where they find her body in this show is almost shot for shot what it looked like in real life. I read a book about it a long time ago. They never found out who killed her.
No. So it's kind of interesting. They're doing almost like a Doctor Who thing where they're taking something from real life and then kind of adding it into the sort of the storyline of the show.
Yeah. When they don't overdo it either.
No.
It's not as if, it's not as if, oh gosh, it's not so popular or it's so well known. I got to think of an example that would be a bad example. Maybe if they had Lizzie Borden, if they brought Lizzie Borden in, that might be going too far.
Yeah.
But to have this murder that occurred in the 1940s that not many people remember or know about unless you tend to stay informed and things like that. But anyway, I'm babbling.
That's my job.
This is 2 cups of coffee, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, this isn't the scotch or the vodka that I usually have when I'm podcasting. So I always had to be drinking something.
When we were watching the Blu-ray, my wife watched it as well, and she really enjoyed it too. She's a huge Tennessee Williams fan, and she thought that the character of the neighbor, played by Jessica Lange, was very much in the sort of mold of the lead from A Streetcar Named Desire.
Oh my God, that's so true. That is absolutely true.
Yeah, and in fact, when we were watching the documentary on the Blu-ray, I think they actually mentioned that. So yeah, it's pretty well spotted. But yeah, you can see that it's that kind of matriarchal, deep South, kind of strong female character.
Yeah, yeah, and she is great. She is and funny when she needs to be funny.
Yeah.
Go down to the Koreans and get me a pack of cigarettes. Um,
But how do we get rid of the gays? There are some great one-liners in there. We hadn't
yeah,
even mentioned
yeah,
Zachary Quinto, did we? Because he features as one of the previous tenants.
yeah, yeah. You know what's so funny? I'm so awful. I'm such a bad nerd. We're watching this, and it's Zachary Quinto and a guy who is not the guy from True Blood.
Mm.
I can't remember the name of the character in True Blood. The blonde vampire guy.
Hmm.
The actor looks exactly like him, but yeah, they're the gay couple that owned the house before our heroes in the story, and they're the ones they were killed by Tate the Ghost.
Hmm.
I'm like, he looks so familiar. Where have I seen him before? And duh, idiot, he played Spock in the new Star Trek movie.
And
Gosh,
of course he was in Heroes as well.
that's right. Yeah, he was. What was the name of the character?
Siler.
Oh, it was a bad guy. Siler.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. So yeah, he knows how to
But
play a bad guy because with their characters, they're kind of again, it's quite a complex thing because they initially come out as quite bad characters, but they've got a real issue with their relationship, haven't they? And very much
Yeah.
not helped by the fact that they're now both dead because his partner was just about to leave when they both get murdered, so now he's stuck with Zach Quinto's character forever, which doesn't bode well.
And they're really catty to each other. They're not necessarily good ghosts or bad ghosts.
No.
They're interesting.
Yeah.
They're interesting characters, and they're very much invested in the baby that they're going to have because I'm sorry that Vivian is going to have
Everyone
because
wants
they
that
were
child.
planning on adopting their own child. Yeah. But there's a couple scenes with them and Jessica Lange that are quite good. I think, if I remember correctly, when they're trying to decorate the nursery.
Mm-hmm.
And if you like Zachary Quinto, I can't tell you, but people who have seen it know. If you like Zachary Quinto, wait until the second season.
Really?
I'm not going to say anything. Yeah. Yeah. I can't. Oh God, I really want to talk about it, but I can't talk about it.
I mean, we can say that is it? Am I right in saying it's set in an asylum?
Yes, yes. That's sort of like its tagline: Asylum,
Yeah.
American Horror Story, Asylum.
Mm-hmm.
Season 2 has the main character is Jessica Lange, and she is the head sister of a mental asylum in 1964, I think.
Okay.
And we have her. I don't know what you would call it. The head sister. I don't know. She's a nun.
Right.
She's an absolutely horrible bitch. And there's also a doctor there, played by James Cromwell, who is
Oh yeah, he's great.
Experimenting on the patients.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the Monsignor, played by Joseph Fiennes, who I haven't seen him in anything since he was in Shakespeare in Love, frankly.
Oh right.
And it's very similar in some aspects to this, to this season, in that the Jessica Lange character does a complete 180, and she goes from being this hard-as-nails bitch to a very sympathetic character by the end of the season. And I can't tell you why.
Okay. I'm going to have to watch and find out.
Yeah, but...
She sounds a bit like Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, that's exactly how she starts out it. But she becomes more sympathetic later on.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember the... I don't remember the character's name, but the one who was married to the doctor that did the Frankenstein baby.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. This is really bad. I can't remember. But yeah, she's very good in it.
Yeah, she comes back in season 2. She plays one of the other nuns, the one below Jessica Lange.
Okay.
And then there's Evan Peters, who plays Tate. He comes back. He also has a larger role. The lady who plays the psychic, Jessica Lange's personal psychic, she has a huge role.
Yeah.
Zachary Quinto comes back. He plays a psychiatrist. And there's an aspect of it. It goes I frankly was surprised that it was even on television,
Really?
and that I wasn't watching like an HBO or Cinemax, because they go a little bit too far sometimes. Um, I'm not complaining, but it almost seemed a little bit inappropriate for something that
Yeah.
that's on.
Regular TV.
Well, not regular, yeah. There's some necrophilia.
Oh, blimey.
There's
I suppose technically you get that in the first
aliens.
season, don't you? In a way.
Yeah. There's some really, oh God. Okay, well, there's aliens play. There's a subplot involving aliens because Tate, I can't remember what his name is in the second season, but he is supposedly abducted by aliens,
Right.
and that's how he ends up in the asylum, because they think he's nuts. There's a subplot involving a killer that's going around killing people. His name is Bloody Face. And by the end... Oh, God, how do I explain this? Dylan McDermott returns.
Right.
And he plays Bloody Face's... I'm not going to say. Yeah, I know, this isn't a spoiler. He actually plays Bloody Face's son.
Okay.
But he doesn't come back until maybe about halfway through the series. Because they start doing flash forwards to modern day,
right,
from 1964. So, it came very, 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 very close to jumping the shark with the aliens.
Right.
I have to admit, because once you put the aliens in there, it was almost like like watching Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
All right, yeah.
But it wasn't that bad. And I also, I stuck with it because I realized that however they wrap this up, they're going to start all over again with the third season. So
they have this ensemble cast that they really like, and they effectively just throw them back in again, but as different characters each time.
Yes. Oh, and Frances Conroy, who plays Moira, she also comes back.
She was really good. I don't think I'd seen her in anything before, but I thought she was really good in this.
Oh, she was in 6 Feet Under.
I hadn't seen that program.
Oh, you haven't seen that?
No.
Okay. That's a pretty good show. Fun fact: those are her real eyes. She actually looks like that.
Yeah, I saw that. Didn't she have some? There was an accident with a rake or something, and then
they
made her eye go that particular kind of color, and they kind of added that into the plot in an interesting way.
I wonder how they, I'm sure she wasn't offended, but like, we got to explain to Frances that we don't want her to wear contact lenses.
Yeah.
You gonna tell her? I'll tell her. Frances, you look freaky. We love it.
Hey, we haven't mentioned the infantata either, have we?
Oh God, yes.
That was freaky.
Yeah, the crazy baby that lives in the basement.
So the guy that originally built the house for his wife and family way back was a doctor, and they had all sorts of problems. The baby was going to die, so he decides to do a bit of a DIY patch-up job, and he makes this kind of Frankenstein's monster with various spare parts that he's got just sort of pickled in jars in the basement. And I don't know if it ever gets called that in the show, but they refer to it on the extras and things as the infantata, and it's a really creepy thing, but you don't really see very much of it. I think that's why it works. Like a lot of good horror, it's one of those things that you just see a glimpse of it, and your imagination does the rest.
There's a really scary scene. It's a flashback of Tate as a little boy, and his toy truck falls down the stairs into the basement, and it comes out. The infantata comes out, and the way that it isn't revealed, like you said, but you just see like a sort of a silhouette in the darkness, and then it just sort of lunges out, and then we see its point of view as it lunges for Tate, and of course he's rescued by the child's mother.
Yeah,
but.
Very freaky.
And I think that's what gets the two little boys in the beginning, in the opening shot. So, and the score, what do you call it? The opening credits music.
Yeah, I mean the whole opening titles were very effective at generating that kind of atmosphere, aren't they? And the music as well. It's kind of very freaky.
Yeah, I know somebody who can't watch it. He would walk out of the room.
Oh, really?
When those were on, because it scared him so much. Yeah,
oh,
a 40-year-old man who couldn't stand to watch. He got used to it after a while, but
He's still in therapy now,
And
but you know.
But everything that you see in those opening titles is they say is explained later on in the show, except for the guy with the shears.
Yeah.
There's a guy that you see briefly, and they never use that.
I think they said they were going to have him in a piece that got cut from the show. So they were
really?
going to explain it, but then they took that piece out.
Huh.
But I'm guessing if you listen to this and you haven't watched it, you're probably not going to want to see it now. But if you if you like horror, it's not. I don't think it's particularly gratuitous in certainly the first season. Anyway, there's a few bits.
No.
Maybe mildly bloody, but I think it's a fantastic series. I would definitely recommend it if you want something to give you a bit of a chill. I think it's a great program, and it's, as we said before, it's quite addictive to watch.
And be careful with season 2 because that is gratuitous. Yeah. I'm that's all I'm gonna say.
I might have to have some Looney Tunes or something lined up on the Blu-ray afterwards, so I don't have nightmares.
But like the first season, and I don't think this is a spoiler, it gets all wrapped up at the end, and everybody does sort of live happily ever after. So I think the show's creators, they're determined to thrill you and to disgust you, but they still let everything turn out okay in the end.
So, because I've asked you to do this, you've probably spent most of the last week or so just marathoning American Horror Story. Is there anything else that you could recommend to our listeners that you've really enjoyed more recently?
I'll tell you what I've been reading. Okay, this is going to sound like a big, huge nerd. This is what I've been reading and doing lately. There's this thing called Game of Thrones that everybody's into.
Oh yes, I just got the box set myself of the first 2 seasons, and yeah, I started off a bit tentatively because there were a lot of characters, and I was trying to get my head around it all. But once I've kind of got into it, it's another one of these programs that I just have to keep watching.
Yeah, I have not seen season 2, but I've read the first book, and I just started the second book. And it's quite excellent. And the first season of the show is very loyal to the book.
Yeah.
And it is one of those things where there's so many characters it's hard to keep track of, even in the book. There's even more characters in the book.
Yeah.
But it's still smooth. It goes down smooth. And then, hand in hand with that, I recently bought an Xbox. I'm almost 40 years old. I haven't had a video game console since the PlayStation 2 when I was in college. And so I just kissed like hours of my life goodbye playing Skyrim. Which
yeah.
I can't get my head around how vast that little Skyrim universe is and all the things that you can do. So I bought the Xbox so I could play Settlers of Catan online, but now, turns out, I'm spending most of the time playing Skyrim. It's like heroin in a box. It's just... And, of course, I can't recommend enough Walking Dead, Breaking Bad. And I'm told that Mad Men is very good as well. Yeah. And there's a show called Doctor Who that I seem to enjoy.
Yeah, I quite like that show as well. I, more recently... I had a chat with one of our listeners. It's called Lena Burgard, and she's based over in California. And we got chatting on Twitter about Agatha Christie.
Oh yes,
yeah, because you like Clue, don't you? That's one of your favorites.
Yes, I love Clue. I collect board games, Clue games, and of course I love the movie.
Yeah. So we were kind of talking about which stories would be good ones to recommend for someone who hasn't read any. And thanks to her, I ended up kind of going back to some old... Because my memory span is not great and my attention span's even worse. I have a lot of audiobooks. So I dug out a copy of one of Agatha Christie's novels called Dumb Witness, which is a really good story. It's a Poirot novel. So I've just finished that one. So I'd like to thank her for prompting me to do that because I haven't heard it for a while and I really enjoyed it.
if you like that,
Mm-hmm.
try 10 Little Indians or And Then There Were None. It goes by
Uh-huh.
two different titles.
Yeah.
That is excellent. That's one of my all-time favorite
Mm-hmm.
books.
One of my favorites of hers was Evil Under the Sun.
Okay, okay.
And
That's a Poirot one, right?
yeah, that's based just down the road from us.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was born in a place called Torquay, which is very
Uh-huh.
close to where I live. So yeah, that's kind of cool because you can envisage the location. It's got a very specific location. A place called Burr Island, which is a little tiny little island just off the coast, and they have a hotel there, and the murder takes place there. They obviously don't call it Burr Island in the book, but it's very much
Huh.
based on that. So that's kind of
Huh.
cool. So yeah, definitely recommend that one if you want to have a catch up on Agatha Christie.
Yeah, I went through a period where I probably read every single one of her books in a row. I devoured them. Not unlike when I started watching Doctor Who. I pretty much devoured Doctor Who too. But
So you've got to get some reading on for your next Doctor Who book club podcast, haven't you?
yeah, we are doing a book called Independence Day. Yeah, I had to put down Game of Thrones and then pick that up. Eric can read a book in one sitting. I can't. I don't have the attention span. No matter how good the book is, I have to read it in bursts. So I actually start reading the book almost a month before we record.
Yeah, I think I'd be the same. Eric is very quick. We did a show about I, Claudius, and he read both the Claudius books in some ridiculous turnaround. And I just about struggled to get through the first one in time for us to record.
He is so clever. I don't know. I don't know.
He's a very clever guy.
Yeah. So, yeah, every time he's on my podcast, I just get really drunk and he probably judges the hell out of me. We're gossiping about fellow podcasters in a podcast. That's nice.
Makes for good listening.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Thank you ever so much for coming onto the show, Sean. I really appreciate you taking some time out.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed it immensely.
Oh, thank you very much. And hopefully you might come back again sometime.
I think I shall. Thank you if I'm asked.
Cool. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.